Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. And today we're actually going to have a bit of fun. We're actually going to get into a topic that is from a book that I had wrote from a long time ago. So it's not something sophisticated or anything like that, but it's called Social Structure. I'll throw the link in the description. But one topic that we're going to cover in this video here, and we'll cover a couple more topics from this book as well later on, because they're just kind of fun topics to kind of like gloss over and might get your mind thinking a little bit. But so this topic is going to be called flavor, which I had spoke about, and it's interesting because it gives a take on the way that we view others, and including the way that we need to view ourselves. And it will, after this video, have maybe a better understanding on how, not so much on how you rate yourself or how you're rated by others or your social market value necessarily. It will kind of help with that a little bit, but it will give a greater understanding of how what your flavor is, what flavor you are, may not be the flavor of people around you or necessarily in your area, but how maybe you can switch up and go to a different area where you are that flavor of that group of people or whatever it is, or that area's group of people, whoever live in that general area, that entire population. Because most of the time, most areas and populations have a similar or same taste, and it's not really based on, you have certain variants based on certain, like backgrounds and race and whatnot. But for the most part, most areas will have a similar taste versus another area, as compared to, like, say, within that area, what people's tastes are different. So we'll jump into it. So figuring out what is flavor and how that works. So first we're going to dissect, and it is very comparable to the metaphor of food, and I'm going to get into that as an example. But first we're going to dive into how you group people in your mind as a particular flavor. So have you ever, when you were young, you met somebody, we'll say like you're in first grade, and you meet somebody, and say if that person their name is Jackie, for example, right? And this will apply to men or women, but the reference I'm making is going to come from a perspective of a man, so don't mind. Excuse me. So say if you see this girl, her name is Jackie. You're in first grade, you see her face. It's not so much about the body type, but it's the face. So when you see their face, you kind of say, okay, this is how Jackie looks. And then say 3 years from then, you see another girl, and whatever her name is, you say she has the Jackie look, And so in your mind, you group this person as that look. And it doesn't matter what their race is, because they can still have facial features that are very similar to Jackie, even though they might be a different skin complexion, a different background. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen this or experienced this, or if you haven't, maybe it's something you will experience, especially if you go to like a bigger city that's very populated. You walk in the street and you'll say, okay, because what happens is, after a certain amount of time of you existing and living and bumping into various random people, you start seeing that the variation in facial features of people you start to hit a plateau where it's like, okay, I've seen all there is, and people start looking similar, especially when you're in large cities where you have a lot of different backgrounds. And so what happens in your mind, you'll go, that person has the Jackie look, whatever relating to whoever that person was that you first saw with that similar look. Sometimes we do that with famous people, if that was the first person that we've seen that had that look, so say if you're seeing like a whatever, we'll say like a Beyonce, or for women, maybe a Jay-Z or something like that. And you'll be like, that person has that Beyonce look in their face, that, whatever the case is. But usually we reference it back to our oldest memory of someone who had a similar face like that. And we kind of catalog it in that way. And we'll go, okay, in our mind, whether we categorize it or catalog it by that person's name, I'm sorry for getting tongue twisted, or whether we catalog it by just having just a reference point in our mind. We don't necessarily have to link it to a name, but just that look. But in general, that would now be that particular flavor, because I don't view flavor necessarily in the grand scheme of things as a race, a background, or anything like that. Because like I said, there are a lot of people who can look very similar to someone else, and have different skin complexion, different, different background, but they still have those similar features, if you've ever recalled this. So to me, that would be a flavor. And um, obviously, you would kind of, with people who are in that similar range that you compare to that category that you put them in, um, you would have a rating scale of 1 to 10 within that rating. And so I know we've all done it before. Like I said, like just hitting hard on that whole you grouping people into certain categories. And this is not about body type, because that's something that changes amongst people all the time. And that's something that is not really like a solid denominator in terms of the fact that some people could be heavy, some people could be slim, but that look in that facial structure, the way they look, the way their eyes are situated on their face, their nose, all those kind of little features. When someone looks similar to another person, you kind of group them in that way. So when it comes to understanding the point of flavor, you would say how attracted are you to that look of that person in that category? So we'll mark that right now as like an A, like an A1. We'll say is like that category, and the small variations on it between this person and that other person who looks similar to that is like almost like an A2. It's like, okay, it's similar but not exactly the same, but it's like they're similar to that. And you would say to yourself, well, how much are you into that? And there's different like variations of it, slight changes, but they all fall into that same like category, similar to you would like a color. Say if you have like a color red, and you have like, different colors on the spectrum wheel of that red, like a dark red, a light red, a slightly lighter, slightly darker, slightly, and then, but you still know it's red. And that's kind of like how we view the flavors of somebody. Now, when it comes to now, so that's putting someone in the category and that general broad category, and so you would now rate them within that flavor. So to bring it back to food, like I was going to say, as far as a metaphor, say everyone who is that Jackie person, for example, right? I'm going to use that name as a reference point for this conversation. So say if you say, okay, I've seen several girls who have that Jackie look. I'm going to call that in my mind the hamburger category, just for the sake of just labeling it as something. I'm not saying that in some kind of, kind of way or meaning, but so you label that as that. So now you would say any variation of that hamburger, you would then rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. Is it a good hamburger? Is it a bad hamburger? Like, how do I like the taste of the hamburger? Some of them are good, some of them are bad, whatever the case is. And so with that comes this concept of you distinguishing those differences in terms of that taste. So you're like, okay, this is my taste, but if it is your taste, assume it is my taste, but then it has a variation of how much I like it. So let's keep it within that metaphor of food. It's like, I like hamburgers, but there's a such thing as a good hamburger and a bad hamburger. And even though I like hamburgers, if it's a bad hamburger, I want nothing to do with it. If it's a good hamburger, by all means, I will want that hamburger. And everybody, you can categorize them in a category where they have those similar facial features and structures that will put them in a category. And we can directly link that to, like I said, for example, link it to a food type and say, okay, this person in your mind is like a pizza. This person's like a hamburger. This person's like a hot dog. This person's like, some type of vegetable, like green beans, whatever the case is. And the list goes on, because there's almost an infinite amount of different ways that people look. And I'm talking about the facial features and structure. I'm not talking about skin complexion or anything of that sort. I'm not talking about their hairstyle. I'm not talking about any of those things that can be changed or that will not change it in the way it looks. Like the way your face structure is, if I change your skin complexion, your face still looks the same. It's just a different color. If I change your hair style, that doesn't change the way you are, because the hair can change at any given time. So you get what I'm saying, variables that can be changed or variables that maybe can't be changed, but don't affect the look of that person. So that doesn't change the flavor of what they are. So with that being said, that is how you would group flavor in terms of what you're into. And so in understanding that for the general population of the area and the flavor, and it's like, okay, and how that person is rated for that flavor. And the reason why I go say that for the area, because we're going to get into how that changes. So you as a person, you might say, I'm into hamburgers. That's cool. When it comes to us understanding our own rating, we need to understand that if somebody is not into hamburger, we'll say that you are a hot dog if someone's not into hot dogs, or maybe that area, no one really likes eating hot dogs in that area, it doesn't mean necessarily that anything's wrong with you. It's just the fact that you're not in an area where people like hot dogs. You have to understand that. So when we think of, you know, um, how good we look and it comes to that social value, social market value when it comes to our looks, a key thing or key factor to understand is that um, there's a broader dynamic or dimension than just what we think of in terms of basic attraction. And it's not to say that general line of attraction is not the standard that we hold up. It is, where if you say, well, someone's attractive, they're probably generally attractive all around, wherever, all around the world. And if they're not attractive, they're generally not attractive all around the world. That's generally true. But then there's that little caveat of when you go into this dynamic of flavor and details of it, you realize that, well, some people will really like the unpopular food. I like to use a V8 as an example of, say, if a person is equivalent to like V8. Some people love V8. A lot of people don't. But then you can't say that that person, and this is for anyone who might look at themselves and say, well, I don't know if I'm considered appealing or not. And this is not to really kind of take you out of the context of reality, but a little bit of a booster for anyone who might feel like, oh, I don't know if I'm attractive or not as a person. Just know that you might be a flavor that not a lot of people like. But if someone is not into that food altogether, their rating doesn't matter. So you're not going to tell somebody who's a vegetarian, rate a hamburger. They're going to tell you like every hamburger is a 0. It's like is like a 1 on a scale of 1 to 10. They're going to say it's a 1 because they don't eat hamburgers. So the rating really matters, and not to skew the average of something. The rating really matters when you are actually, or if someone is actually into that flavor. Period. It's not fair to rate a flavor that someone's not into at all, and then try to give it a rating, because of course they're going to give it a bad rating. So that's to give context to say that, if you understand the area that you're in, that flavor that you are is not what's appealing in that area. Sometimes you can go to a different area and people like different flavors. But like I said, flavor is not necessarily a race thing or anything like that. It's really like the dynamic of what you look like in terms of your facial structure and how it compares to others, and how they relate you with someone else that they may have known from the past, and grouping you into a category whether they thought was appealing, not appealing. And I know this might get a little bit confusing, but I hope that you guys are getting what I'm trying to say and what I'm trying to convey here, because I definitely think that this concept of flavor does break down in this way, where it has these dynamics to it. And like I said, we all have experienced that feeling in the past where we say, okay, like I've seen different people and I group them in that category. And I know we've all done it. Like how many times we even have, whether it's females or males, you're like, this person looks like this other person. You know what I mean? You can look at someone and go, this person looks like that. Or how many times, for example, a great example of this is, how many times have you guys seen when it comes to movies, and you'll see like maybe like a stunt double that looks very much in the face just like the person that they're trying to play. Like that's a perfect example right there of someone being the exact same food category, like the exact same flavor. They are the exact same flavor. They might have even different color hair, whatever the case is, but the facial structure looks so much similar that if they look very similar, in such a way that you almost look at them the same. And not all stunt doubles are that close. So it doesn't refer to all stunt doubles. Some people just have that general look, but they don't really look like the same person in the face. But when someone looks really like someone in the face, that'd be the equivalent of being like, okay, like that's the same flavor. And then you would rate them accordingly. One is a little better than the other, but nonetheless, they're the same flavor. So that's exactly kind of what I'm referring to. This even goes deeper too, on a deeper level, and I really didn't want to dive into this, but it gets to a level that might go over people's mind and stuff like that. So I don't want to overcomplicate it. So this part right here of the video, if you want to just stop now, because the rest of this is just going to sound maybe over the top, a little bit silly, you can do that. But it even gets to the point where somebody's flavor, we're just going to stick with that term, someone's flavor of how they are and how they look, their features, especially their mouth and how their mouth looks. If it looks similar to another person's mouth, is when you're going to be able to tell this. because it's a more of a giveaway than anything else. Try this experiment in the real world if you can. Obviously, don't make it very obvious because you know you don't want to offend anybody or this and that, but it's just something you'll keep to yourself. If you see someone who has a similar type of mouth to someone else, obviously these are going to be the components that make up, you know, their flavors, like their eye structure, their cheekbones, all that kind of stuff that would give them their general shape. But specifically, the mouth also is a very key component. The reason why I say that is because when it comes to flavor, if someone has a similar mouth to another person, like the really details of it, like the way their mouth looks, it may not necessarily just be their teeth, but the way their lips look, the way their mouth looks, everything, the way their lip movement is when they talk, you're going to end up finding that get close to them if you can. If it's someone that you know, you can get close up to them. Smell their breath when they talk. It's not a matter of whether the breath is bad or good. It's just everyone has their own natural scent to their breath. What you'll find is that if you see another person who has that same kind of mouth, they're going to have the same kind of smell of breath. I think what's very interesting about that I never heard anyone ever speak about before, is that in a way, that's almost like your way of saying that their DNA, this is just a theory of mine, their DNA matches that other person's DNA. And not only does it show in the way that they look, because they're going to be, like I said, that same flavor where you go, oh, that person has the features like I said before, like Jackie from back in the past who I met in first grade. Like has this person's same features. That's how you categorize them in your mind. Or like I said, lack of a better word, we're just going to say flavor. This is that same flavor you say inside your mind. But then when you actually get close to them, you realize even their scent is the same as people who are of that same flavor. I don't know if you ever noticed something like that, but like I said, do an experiment, test that out. And if you do, come back to the comments, leave some comments down below and tell me what your experience is like. But my theory on that of why, and I've actually encountered that where their scents are the same. And I feel the reason why is because you are smelling them on a DNA level. Their scent is the same. And if you are appealed by their natural scent, it means that their DNA is almost like compatible to you. If it's not, then it's like their DNA is not, similar to the concept of pheromones. But I'm just noting that it's very interesting that you can now visually just see someone and know what their DNA is on a level of attraction just by sight. And it's very interesting. But I've actually encountered this in real time and noticed this to be a correlation, that someone who has the same flavor as someone else has the same scent as somebody else, which is very interesting. So try that experiment and see if you feel that it matches up for you. But I've definitely seen that for me, just in person, just encountering people and their natural scent matching the way they would look. And then it goes into that deeper level like that, which I think is very interesting to know that on that kind of almost animal level, similar to while you might see other animals or mammals who, you know, like smell each other and this and that. We actually can do the same. And I don't necessarily mean it has to be on that level of sniffing someone's private area like a dog, but just even their face, their mouth, you can tell which ones have the same scent. And I feel personally, based on the fact that they may look the same in terms of that flavor, that their scent is denoting DNA, having similar DNA. There's no way for us to kind of really prove that unless someone sat down and said, I'm going to do a DNA test and like match if they had equivalent, like, I don't know what you would look for in that case, chromosomes, traits, DNA, whatever, like cells. But I think it's very interesting. But like I said, we're wrapping this all up. The whole concept of flavor, I hope you understand it. I hope you understand how to use it to your benefit. Try to have an idea of what your flavor is based on the people who are attracted to you and who are not. If you feel like you have certain people who are attracted to you that are just out of nowhere, and a lot of other people aren't attracted to you, that means you're considered a flavor that not a lot of people are into, but some people are into. If you are a flavor that a lot of people are attracted to, obviously you're in an area where people like that flavor and it very much suits you. But with that being said, understand that if you're in an area that doesn't suit you, try going to another area, even if it's just like a little day trip, take a little drive, maybe an hour away, 2 hours away, and just have that experience where you, see if your flavor is different in a different area and how that affects things and how you realize it. And put the comments down below if you experienced that, and let us know what you think, how that felt, what was it like, what your experience was like. With that being said, you guys, I'll catch you guys in the next video.